Welcome back everyone. Today we're going to be pulling out the VQ35 from my 2003 350Z in order to do a test fit of my 2JZ GTE. If you've been following along with the series, you'll know exactly why I'm doing this swap. You'll know everything that's gone from the start of the engine up until now. If not, you might want to go back and check out the very first video I posted to see exactly why I'm putting a 2JZ into my 350Z. Now this video is going to be mostly about how to pull the VQ35 out. It's not necessarily going to be a tutorial, but I will try to cover as many steps as I possibly can just to help you guys out if you're going to be pulling a VQ35 out, doing a similar swap or the same swap. Now if you've been following along for a while, you'll know the entire purpose of this series is to cover all the steps, parts, costs, and headaches associated with the project. And as you can guess, doing an engine swap will come with a lot of those different factors. So the biggest one is to know, with a stock twin turbo setup, will a 2JZ GTE fit into a 350Z? Stay tuned to find out. I hope you enjoy the video. Alright, I am happy to announce that today is the big day. I'm going to be attempting taking the VQ out of the 350Z over there. I'm going to try to make the most of my time and just get started ASAP. It's about like 9:30-ish right now in the morning. I'd like to get at least the front end off around noon-ish. And without further ado, let's get started. Alright, first things first, the car had to be up in the air in order for the engine to come out. Normally people would use a lift and then pull the engine out from the bottom with the subframe, but unfortunately I don't have the luxury of a lift, so I'm going to be using jack stands. I started with the lower set, worked my way up to a taller set, and once it was up in the air I can finally start working on getting things apart. So there's 6 clips on the top of the bumper, and I believe there's about 10mm bolts across the bottom, and then on the sides there's 2 bolts that hold the fender to the bumper and then 1 that holds the bumper to the headlight. So I took the wheel off on both sides and then just peeled back that fender liner and then took those 3 bolts off to completely free the bumper. There were a couple of trays underneath from Z1 Motorsports that I had to take off as well. Then I started getting the headlights off, the front bash bar off, as well as the AM intake. And then shortly after I got the intake completely off, I started working on getting all the little knickknacks attached to the core support off. I did put a blanket on the windshield to take my hood off to make it easier as I was working around everything and to make sure I didn't scratch or crack the windshield as I was taking it off. I ended up disconnecting the hood latch cable, draining the radiator fluid. I believe I started getting onto the horns and the airbag sensors as well as the coolant reservoir. We did end up having to cut the power steering lines that went up around to the front to the power steering cooler. They were too stiff. They would not slide off the metal hard lines themselves. But after that, we got all the electronics unhooked, the AC condenser was unhooked, and we were finally able to get the core support completely off the front of the car. Quick little update, the core support is now off. I'm just going to wait for everything to drain. So the power steering fluid is still draining, the coolant is still draining. Next I'll do the oil, and then should be able to start taking the actual motor out as soon as everything's done draining. That's how black the oil is. It's like chocolate.
Big enough to go around that thing.
Face down on something. Alright, so my dad is currently working on getting the heater core hoses undone. While he's doing that, I'm going to attempt to get the ECU out so we can unplug the harness. The ECU is right there. center of the screen, that really shiny piece, that's the connector for it. I'm gonna try to get that out and get the harness disconnected so we can pull it through the firewall. Instead of disconnecting literally every sensor, just pull the ECU and then pull the motor straight through that way. Just wanted to make a quick update to say how far I've gotten since you saw the last clip. I've got the exhaust completely off. The ECU is disconnected. The wiring harness is pulled through. I'll show you that real quick. That's all pulled through right there. That's the ECU plug-in. And then there's another plug-in. I forget what it's for. Power steering hoses have been disconnected. Those are right there. AC is obviously disconnected. That has been removed from the AC compressor itself. And as you can see, the exhaust is not on there. I've got it sitting on the ground over there. So my next task is to get the drive shaft out. And the weather's been in the 90s most of the day. It's cooled off a little bit now, but I haven't got a whole lot left to remove from the engine in order to pull it out. It's currently about 6 o'clock. I highly doubt I'm gonna get everything pulled apart today, but I do want to try to get as much as I possibly can done. So I'm gonna try to do the drive shaft now, and then whatever else I find, I'll try to get to those items as well. But yeah, I'm gonna keep going. So I got the drive shaft out. I completely forgot to mention this, but it does have a little recession, or I should say a raised piece at the center of it. So when you're trying to take it off, you are gonna have to spray some WD-40 in there, or maybe some PB Blaster. And then you're also gonna need like a wedge of some sort, like a chisel or a screwdriver, to kind of pry it off of that so it'll come off of the differential, or else you'll just be sitting under there tugging on it, not knowing why it won't come off. So it has to come forward. The easiest way to do it is just to pry it off. All right, it is about 8 o'clock on the 4th of July. I've gotten a lot done on this engine as far as getting it apart. I only have a couple of things left before it can come out, and that is the catalytic converters, the shifter, and the transmission brace. But I'm gonna call it for today because I've gotten literally everything done, but the catalytic converter bolts are in the most notoriously annoying spot. I don't know if I can see it from the top. Yeah, let me go from the bottom real quick. So the bolts are right there, and if anyone has ever tried to do headers on a VQ, they know these are a pain in the ass. You can get a tool in right here where my hand's at. So at this angle, I can get a ratchet in and I can go back and forth here and here. But it's one of those where you have to do like one click at a time. And it's 8 p.m. right now, and I don't want to spend another 2 hours just removing these 6 bolts. These are already broke loose. These 2, I believe, are still in need of being broken loose, but the nut on the other side over here, where is it? This one, that is already broken loose. So I literally just need to remove the 4 and then break these loose and get these out. Here's that transmission brace, by the way. Once this thing's out, the transmission can basically come down. And right now, my only issue is getting the cats out, getting these sensors unplugged. The oxygen sensors need to be removed. That way I can pull this out. Catalytic converters, sensors won't be in the way. This brace won't be in the way. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then lastly, the shifter, it needs to be unbolted from the back of the transmission. So once this is free, these are out, and those cats are completely unbolted, engine can go that way. But that'll have to be for Sunday most likely. That's a cool ass perspective right there. Alright, I just got the catalytic converters out. They were probably the biggest pain in the ass so far out of anything on the engine to get apart, except for maybe the power steering and AC lines, but I'll show you what I had to do to get them out real quick. So here they are. Just so you know, the top bolts are going to be the hardest ones to get to. There's a bunch of stuff in the way, including the firewall, and when you're putting your wrench in there on this side of the car, you're going to have I believe a power steering line coming up right here, as well as a clutch fluid line coming down in the way, so you're going to have to push those out of the way as you're working on that bolt and that bolt there. This one's a lot easier too because you come from the back side, and there's plenty of room on the back side between the transmission
transmission and this bolt here on the catalytic converter there. This side was a little easier. It's still pretty tight because I think there is another power steering fluid line coming down right about here. This one's just as easy as the other side. Same free space you get right here to right here between that and the transmission. But yeah, these were a lot easier. The only thing I would have to say is that it kind of sucks when you're in there because you only get like one click of movement on a ratchet or a ratcheting wrench. So that's the best tool to use, but it's also very time consuming. And over here on the driver's side, this is where the catalytic converter bolts up right here. This is that clutch fluid line I was talking about. These are the power steering lines right here. And then of course, right back in there, you've got your steering column, which is also conveniently in the way. You got bolts right here and right here that you need to get out, and then only like an inch or two, I'd say like 2 inches most likely at the top there of space to get a ratchet or wrench on, and then 2.5 to 3 right here. So it's very tight. You just got to be patient when you're doing it. This one right here is the easy one on the back I was just talking about. Same goes for this side. That's the easy one. When you come this way, your only interference is going to be this line right here. You can see that my ratchet hit this pretty often as I was doing it. Yeah, you only got like one click of movement back and forth here to get that bolt and that bolt off, but I got mine out and I've got plenty of time for the rest of the day to get the rest of the engine out. There's not a whole lot left. To make it easier on myself, I just disconnected the 2 oxygen sensors that went to both of the catalytic converters and unbolted it from here, and then unbolted the brace that holds both of the catalytic converters to the bottom of the transmission, which is what that big piece in the middle of both of them is. But now the only thing I think I really have left to do is these bolts here that hold the shifter in. I'll unbolt those, unbolt the transmission brace here. That should allow the transmission to drop down. Undo the motor mount bolts, which are right there and right there, and then the thing should be free to come out. Now to get to those bolts, I think all you got to do is take out the shift boot, the shift knob, all that good stuff. Those should be able to stay. This plastic piece should be able to stay as long as you just flip it over to the side. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that real quick. Looking at it here, it should be pretty easy. It's just 10 4mm bolts. So I'm gonna remove those and then go down to the transmission brace. Okay, so I completely just took that piece off. You technically could just leave this cable connected and lean it over, but just to make sure I don't damage it, I'm just gonna tuck it back in there and leave that piece over there by itself for the time being. All right, so this thing is kind of just stuck on a little bit. You have to put like a trim tool underneath it just to pop it up, and then you should be able to slide it off like so. Just popping that off next. I'm gonna pull that up. God, it's a little tight. There we go. Now I'm just gonna pop this cover off, undo this bolt here. All right, shifter's free. All right, just unbolted the slave cylinder from there. That needs to be loose. All right, so I'm taking the bolts out down here. This one goes through a little bushing on the transmission. There's 2 bolts here and 2 bolts there. We're grabbing a jack right now. Put support from the bottom. Keep it from falling. The motor mount bolts out. And this guy that sits on the back of the transmission, there's a couple little sleeves on top of the transmission that slide into those grooves there and there. So you'll have to pop this off from the top. So after you drop the transmission, you'll be able to angle it down, loosen those 2 bolts, and then you'll have to pop it up, and then it'll come right off. I just wanted to put in the video real quick. If you have any questions about anything involving taking the VQ35 out, please post those down below. I will do my best to answer the questions. I will definitely be here to help you figure them out. Okay, so the VQ is finally out of the car. That means only a couple of things left to swap it over. I'll show you real quick. Gotta take these motor mounts off of the VQ35. They're gonna bolt to the bottom of the brackets that Colin supplied for the 2JZ. So that's how that's gonna work, which they will just sit back inside of the subframe in the same spots as before. So I think this was the driver's side.
Yes.
Okay, driver's side, motor mount. So there's this little, I don't know what you would call it. I guess it's just a support of some sort to reduce vibration, but it's welded on and it won't fit on there with that because there's a locator pin here and then a nut, and they slide into this groove and then this groove. And then obviously that's gonna be in the way, hitting the bottom of the mount. So we gotta cut that off first. So there's like 2 welds, one there and one on the opposite side over there. Cut those and it should go on. Okay, so we have hit an unfortunate snag. I'm just gonna film it real quick to show you guys. So apparently the stock twin turbos do not fit. As you can see right now, the second turbo in the back is touching the firewall right now. There are 2 small dents in it from that bolt there, tapping the firewall as well. So unfortunately, those turbos will not fit in here without modifying the firewall, which means I gotta pull this back out and then either cut it or hammer it in. I think I'm just gonna cut it and re-weld a piece because that's better. Most likely I might actually have my dad do that because he's a lot more skilled at it than I am. And on this side with the Greddy plenum, it is touching this brake line currently, but I think if it were to go that way and down more, this would have more clearance. It wouldn't be as much of a problem over here. So I think that's the solution, is cutting out that piece of the firewall and then dropping this and sliding it back where it needs to sit properly. So back out it goes. Well, I hope you just learned something valuable, because I sure did. I learned that a stock twin-turbo 2JZ does not fit inside of a 350Z engine bay, even with the Collins kit. So for those of you who are doing a big single turbo, congratulations, your engine is going to fit. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to modify my firewall, which is something I really didn't want to do. I was hoping it would just be a direct swap over, bolt everything in, be done with it, but unfortunately not. But instead of just ending this video on a sour note, the engine not being in, I figured I'd just throw in some footage from Automobilia. And if you don't know what Automobilia is, it's the biggest annual car show in Wichita. They'll close down 3 or 4 blocks of downtown, and there'll just be thousands of cars, tens of thousands of people, lots of vendors, lots of music. Really cool event. Takes place close to our old town, which is like our most historic part of the city. So anyways, here's the footage from that. It's not going to be the greatest, but I hope you enjoy it. Alright, I am currently at Automobilia. This is basically Wichita's biggest car show. So I'm going to try to film all my favorites for the most part. when I had my MR2, some. I like this. Like magnets.
It is ridiculous. This thing does not gain traction to save its life. It pulls so damn hard. He took this to one of the car meets down Cape.
Give us a rev! While we were there at Automobilia, there was a funny car, and so the crew that runs this car at the drag strip was actually there. They started it up, and they ran it for a few seconds until something broke. I don't know what broke. I'm assuming it was something inside the engine, because when they were done, they started taking it apart and selling the rods and pistons and all the other parts. So, a group of my friends, me, Preston, Isaiah, you probably saw him a few times in the video in the white shirt and blue shorts, and then Preston's girlfriend, we're like, well, let's just buy some of the parts. So I'll put this up on screen. So we got a couple of rods and then a piston head. So freaking cool. Absolutely a blast every time I go to Automobilia, because there's always cool stuff like that going on. Anyways, this is the end of the video. I hope I was able to bring you some either informational or entertainment value to your day. With that being said, make the rest of your day a great day. Peace out. I will see you guys in the next video, and hopefully we will have the 2J in by the end of that one.